A smile on my face. It's a beautiful day. Welcome everyone to the Green Nurse Podcast, where we bring hope and inspiration for growth and healing. We're here to change the dialogue and stigma around what it means to feel good or be high. Hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing. You deserve to feel good. We all deserve to feel good. And here is a little video about what we do in the cannabis space as nurses. And then we're going to get right into our amazing podcast today.
Change the paradigm of healthcare.
The Green Nurse is a holistic cannabis nurse that teaches on the endocannabinoid system and the safe utilization of cannabis and other progressive tools to help people reach a better quality of life.
I'm the founder of Holistic Caring. We're based here in California, and we do educational programs and case management for patients on how to use cannabis therapeutically as a medicine.
We're also here to decrease stigma around what it means to feel good and be high, hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing.
As the founder of Holistic Caring, I basically oversee the whole ship. And what we're doing is progressive education.
Cannabis actually supports all 11 organ systems, our immune system, and all the neurotransmitter signaling systems that give messages to tell our body to either do something or not do something. Because the plant was prohibited, it prevented health professionals, doctors and nurses from learning about cannabis as medicine.
I want to change the paradigm of healthcare and us paving the way into a new vanguard of medicine.
It's about education, it's about empowerment, it's about teaching people how to feel good, bridging the gap from what they're not getting from traditional medicine, utilizing different plant medicines, adaptogens, tips, tricks, hugs, and nugs of information to support and nourish the most important system in our body.
And it's a lot of soul work, a lot of love, a lot of discipline, and meditation. I'm using my life work as a testimony to others to learn how they can be their own hero and then go help heal the world.
And we are, as nurses, the game changers.
There you go. Growing your health, growing in cannabis, living your best life, and helping others do the same. Hey, everyone. Welcome. My name is Sherry Mack, and I'm here with my partner in crime, Nurse Elizabeth Mack. And I'm Chief Nursing Officer and co-founder of Holistic Caring in the Green Nurse and Vice President of Nursing at Bloom Hemp CBD. I'm a cannabis nurse, patient, advocate, activist, and a very passionate podcaster here to change the paradigm of healthcare. And I'm really excited to announce that this has been my 7th year podcasting The Green Nurse, Living Your Best Life. I started podcasting in 2018 when the National Council State Boards of Nursing came out with their call to action that nurses must have 6 essential areas of knowledge when it comes to cannabis as medicine. I started podcasting to share compelling stories of healing and to decrease stigma, since I too use cannabis as medicine. Cannabis nursing has been recognized as a specialty, and nurses are truly making an impact on advocating for the safe therapeutic use of cannabis by teaching on the endocannabinoid system and how to optimize cannabis as medicine for health, healing, and wellness purposes. So before we get started with our very special interview and our guest today, all the way from Australia, we have to give gratitude and thanks to our sponsor. And who is our sponsor today, Elizabeth?
Well, our sponsor today is Bloom Hemp. So Bloom Hemp is a woman and nurse-owned hemp CBD company, leading with quality, safety, value, and patient-centered care. They grow USDA organic hemp CBD in the mountains of Colorado, tested for purity, potency, cannabinoid, and terpene profiles. Bloom is also proud to offer a free nurse line. So you can call 970-404-HOPE, 4673. And then you can talk to a nurse, a pharmacist, and figure out how best to use these plant medicines. And so there's a turkey sale on this weekend. So Max 40 gives you 40% off your entire cart through 12/2. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Cyber Monday. So Thanks 40 is your ticket to savings at Bloom Hemp.
All right. Thank you, Bloom Hemp, for all you do. And now for our very special guest. I'm very excited to introduce Melanie Wentzel, the author, healthcare strategist, and a cannabis consultant. Melanie Wentzel is truly a people person, deeply committed to authentic leadership, creating value, and fostering joy. She believes in the potential of women, individuals, and their communities. Throughout her career, Mel has dedicated herself to health system reform and enhancing health and care services for communities both in Australia and internationally. Her passion for emerging care models centers around one of the most exciting developments in modern medicine, the convergence of healthcare and cannabis industries. As an award-winning thought leader with a background in psychological science, Mel captivates her audience and boasts an impressive array of publications, conferences, workshops, webinars, panels, podcasts, and many other accolades. Her contributions extend to esteemed organizations, including the Women Changing the World Summit, the Medical Journal of Australia, the Australian Medical Association, the Australian Department of Health, Palliative Care Australia, the Gwendolyn National Palliative Care Project, MJ Biz and the Cannabis Law Report, among others. Wow. Today, we are very, very excited to have her on the show to share and celebrate her new book launch, Cannabis Queens. Welcome to the show, Melanie.
Welcome, Mel.
My goodness, thank you for having me. And when you say it like that, I sound like I've done some great work. It's nice to hear it read back to me. So thank you.
You have done some nice work, Mel, like amazing work. And you're bringing women together from across the world, which I think is just so fascinating and so inspiring and so desperately needed. So, you know, we all don't wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to publish a book called Cannabis Queens, right? There's generally a compelling story or something along those lines that led you to write this amazing book. So I want to hear it all.
Amazing. I think that I'm going to dive straight in and I'm going to say, you know, and for the audience who might not know, we have had the opportunity to sit together and hold space, the three of us previously, when I interviewed you for the book. Which was really beautiful and really special. And I know from that time that we've spent together that this will resonate for you when I say, really, this project is spirit-led. Yeah. And I didn't realize that when I started. I started in January this year. I had a turning point in my cannabis career. I had a business that with a partner that we just didn't want to continue together. And I found myself just reevaluating. I had kind of over a decade in mainstream healthcare. I had a really successful year in cannabis. And I thought, God, what, literally, God, universe, goddess, what next? Mm-hmm. And in fact, you know, my ego would love to be, I had this great idea for a book. In fact, you know, Spirit kind of downloaded it straight into my head and was like, actually, you love women, you love their stories, and you love how those things converge in cannabis. So that's what we need you to do now. So I went along for a few weeks, still thinking it was all my idea. And then I started to realize, in fact, just how spirit-led this project was when I started doing the interviews and I started speaking with women like yourselves, like 75 other sit-down formal interviews that, you know, I've amassed almost 300 hours in formal interviews in the writing of this book. There's 212 in-depth survey responses that I received. And I went through and I personally have hand analyzed all of that data myself. I coded comments to pull different kind of pools of data out. And but even before I got to the analysis, just sitting in those conversations, it became two things became really apparent to me. The first thing was that I am simply the vessel for these stories. And it was such a relief because It was I was like, oh God, this is a giant job. This is amazing. This is wonderful. And, well done, Mel. Great idea. You're really clever. Thank you. But then I started to realize that actually I'm just the vessel for these stories. And also that and because I'm just the vessel, the second part to that is I don't need to attach myself to what the outcome will be, because again, I'm simply the vessel. So so that's where it kind of started. And I was very much called to do it. Just like 80% of the women I spoke to who work in the cannabis industry all said in their own words, in their own way, I am called to work with the plant. I am called to do this. And this is what I've been called to do for the plant, is to write this book. So I'd love to sit back in that ego piece and go, I had this great idea, but actually I was just very lucky to be the recipient of this responsibility, I think.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. So I have a question. What if someone asked you to share your cannabis story in the Cannabis Queens book? What would your story have been? What would you have focused on?
And did you?
Yeah. And did you share your
We haven't gotten our copy.
Because we haven't gotten our book
I
yet.
ordered it 2 days ago.
I know. So so sort of, yes, I did. So in terms of how much of my story is in there, of the 87 images and illustrations, or images that appear in the book, 85 of them are photos of women in the cannabis industry. I appear in 3 of them. One is the author photo, and 2 others that I have, 3 others, sorry, that I have with colleagues. So I appear in 4 photos out of 87. Right. I shared about 2 paragraphs about my own story in the book, not for any reason other than in assembling and really curating the other stories. Some were bigger, some were smaller, and in theming them, and I'll tell you kind of the main themes that I pulled out, I just placed my story where I felt it belonged. And it was so interesting because I thought, again, coming into the project, I'm not an egotistical person, but just as a human, as a person, as someone having a lived human experience, we all have that because we intellectualize things. I thought, I'll tell my story and I'll tell the practical things about how I've worked with 30 companies and how I've done this and that. It's actually not what I told. What I ended up telling were very deeply personal things that many people, even my family, don't know. And actually, before I approved the final proof, I had to sit my 17-year-old son down and say, I need you to read this before I send it live, because I don't want you to not know this before the world gets to know it about me. So I wasn't expecting that. So the things that I shared, I'm happy to share them now. One was actually about my childhood. So it's so interesting. I learned a lot about myself and my history during the making of this book. I always knew that there was some connection with cannabis with my parents. I was raised in a cannabis-friendly household, but not in a medicine framework, more in a drug framework. But as a child, I knew there had been something more illicit that had been going on, and I was right. So during the process of the book, and my mother has passed, I've got a lovely stepfather, but he came in after this part of, I guess, the story. And my father doesn't speak to me. We don't have a relationship. So it was great. My aunties and uncles unlocked the stories for me. And I said, just tell me. Like, there's no reason for you not to tell me. So in fact, right up until I was 3 years old, both my mother and father were not only cannabis users, but heroin users, which was quite shocking to discover. And they were also associated with a significant biker gang that I won't name, and I don't name in the book, just for safety, and let's not reattach. I don't want to reattach to that energy. So I was raised in a house, which came from, it wasn't flash, right? It wasn't great. So, and cannabis was a part of that. And I say in the book, cannabis is just a plant, not just a plant, it's the plant. But cannabis is just a plant, and it's how we frame it, and it's the social context that we place it within that indicates whether it's used as a medicine, whether it's used as a drug. Sometimes those are crossover. used as a drug, I would frame as abused as a drug, because I believe that euphoria is a part of medicine as well. And I know that that's a belief that we all share.
Yes.
So I shared that about myself. And, there's some other tidbits. Actually, my childhood included knowing 2 of Australia's most famous serial killers who were contacts of my family. I mean, and I'll let you read the book to find out who they were, that you will know who they are. So I came from that kind of piece, and that's not the story I was expecting to tell, but it's something I discovered about myself. And in sitting in my vulnerability, and because everyone who I spoke with for the book made themselves so vulnerable and was so open and trusted me, I felt called to trust myself and to trust the public when they read this with my story. The other part I shared about myself is about a sexual assault, and you can understand now why I needed to kind of run this by my son before I sent it live in the book. Addison Morris, who's the founder and CEO of the Women's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, has been a great champion for this book. I asked her right back at the start if she would write the foreword, and she did, and it's beautiful. And I asked her to share her story. I mean, not spoiler alert, she used to attend, she's a white woman, she used to attend Black Panther meetings. I mean, she has been at the front of fighting for social justice and for women's rights for decades. And she shared about her own sexual assault that she endured. And in response to that, to build out that story, I shared mine. So 2 deeply personal things about myself that I just did not ever know. And I do think that, again, Spirit probably said, we're going to shine a light on all of this because it's going to heal it, whether you kind of like it or not. So, so it's interesting. It's probably not what you were expecting to hear, but those are the pieces. So I've really exposed myself in the book, and actually I'm delighted that I did.
Well, so are we, because, the healing is in the feeling. And so if you can truly, and this plant brings up so many different feelings, so many different times during our lives, and then to be able to sit with it and work with it and process it and move through it, because it's energy.
And it's really about shared vulnerability, right? Because people can all identify with these sorts of feelings. And, it's kudos to you.
Kudos to you. So, and also too, it's also a statement to me that I love myself enough to be open and vulnerable with you. Right. Yeah. So in other words, I love myself, and I've done enough healing with myself that no matter what I say, if it impacts you in a way that isn't good, I'm sorry, but it's no offense taken. But I love myself enough to be open and vulnerable with you, because the story needs to be told and other people need to hear it in case they have something that's going on.
Which is what we all did.
Right. That's exactly right. And it truly is that shared vulnerability piece that really resonates for me, because I didn't feel as though I had to. And those pieces about myself I wrote in right at the end. I mean, I did not write those in to start. But I do think I didn't feel a responsibility to do it. I didn't feel the other women in the stories would expect it of me, but I felt safe enough within their stories, within my book, which speaks to all of our stories, to do that. And I can't think of another context where I ever would have. So it was a real joy. I mean, the learnings I've had have just been incredible. I mean, it's changed me as a person. It's made me a better person.
That was one of the questions. How has Cannabis Queens changed your life?
Oh my God, in so many magnificent ways. And no one's even read the book. I mean, can you believe the book is not even out yet? And it just has the support and love of so many people. I mean, so many people. And I'm not in any way afraid of that, because I know the book is excellent. My learnings were, I guess, how it's changed my life. It's changed my life in a very practical way, in that in the writing of this book, I've had a full-time job the whole time I've been writing this book. So this book, all of the interviews, all of the surveys, all of the research, all of the writing was done before 9 a.m. and after 5 p.m. and on weekends. So I've really been running, 2 full-time jobs, minimum 80 hours a week for the whole year to do it. I took 3 weeks off and I traveled to the UK. I spoke at the Women Changing the World Summit and won an award over there. And actually that was an interesting piece because I spoke at the Women Changing the World Summit about cannabis and women in cannabis. And I kind of tested out these stories because it was way back. I'd done the research, but I hadn't done the writing. In fact, I started the writing. I put a photo up on the Cannabis Queens Instagram. It was about 3 a.m. I was staying in Chinatown in London. Outside of my bedroom window, there was kind of a red light because there was, so it was, fabulous alley full of kind of wonderful sex workers. And I was like dimly lit. And I took a photo because I was like, this is where I write chapter 1. So I guess, I took that time out. And then when I was over there, I spoke at the summit and I had to ask, the summit, because the summit is attached to the Duchess of York and to Dr. Tara Trent, who does work with Oprah. So I did ask permission in advance. And I said, listen, my topic of expertise is women and cannabis. That's what I'd like to present on. And I got the full approval to do it. So that was really the first public presentation of what the book would become. And it was very well received in a room of really impactful women who were largely cannabis naive. So it's kind of changed my life in lots of different ways as we've gone along. It's made me busier, definitely. It's made me more broke, definitely. It's expensive to write a book. But those are small transactional things because it's grown me as a person and it's grown my community and my network and my friendships. And it's given me a voice and it's allowed me to take up space. And I believe in taking up space because if I don't take up space, someone else will, who maybe has a different agenda. So if I have an agenda and I think it's good and right, and I'm good at communicating that message, then I'm going to take up space.
Yes.
So it's kind of enabled all those things, right? So it's been, it's just been in a multitude of ways it's changed my life. And now, I'm speaking at MJ BizCon and I'm only 2 years in cannabis. Like, what an immense privilege,
Yes.
Well,
MJ Biz, you're going to have to.
many cheers.
Yes.
And may you redeem some of the dollars you spent.
Oh.
Come back in multitudes.
Well, and that leads to the next question, because everyone thinks that, becoming an author, you become rich overnight and things are right. What was your journey like for you as a first-time solo author? So,
great question. Yeah, it's a great question because I was quite naive going into it. So I and you'll notice that I've really lent into my humility this year. So because which is a great thing. When I started, the first thing I wrote this year, so I've actually written in 3 books this year. 2, I've written chapters in anthologies. The first one, actually, I'm delighted to share that the first one, Women Making a Difference, which is with Women Changing the World Press, actually became an Amazon #1 bestseller 2 days ago. So I'm now officially a #1 best-selling author, which is amazing. And then I kind of went through that process in the anthology, but it was just like, do your edits and then, do the book launch and a few bits. I really did not understand the larger process of writing a whole book. It's wild.
Yeah.
And it was all okay. And I'm a project manager and operations manager in my day-to-day work. A healthcare strategist, but the practicality of what I do is project and operations management to inform healthcare and cannabis care. So I ran it like a project, which I was very comfortable with. And that's kind of one layer of it. And the other layer is the emotional journey, which I've just explained to you was very deep. It was very deep waters, to be honest. And then there's the social journey, which is where I learned to publicly acknowledge myself as someone who's writing a really important book. And people learn to accept me as someone who's writing a really important book. So I think it's those 3 pieces, and that's the journey. And all of that was going along fine until about 8 weeks ago, when my publisher lost their nerve to publish a book about cannabis.
Wait. They what happened?
They lost their nerve.
They dropped the book. They lost their nerve. They said, we're no longer prepared. We feel this is, you know, to paraphrase, it's too spicy of a topic, and we won't be publishing on it.
They don't like spicy broccoli?
I'm obviously not, because I'm out here on my own with the spicy broccoli. So it was unexpected, and I was quite blindsided by it. It was done. It was dropped on me in an unplanned meeting. There were two of them there. There was one of me. I immediately called out the power imbalance in that meeting when I realized what we were going into. But you know, by the end of that hour, I had managed to just completely dissolve the contract and have all my rights and then move forward. So for the past 8 weeks, on top of that social journey, that emotional journey, that practical journey of writing a book, I've now added a layer, which is become a publisher.
Yeah.
So no rest for the wicked over here. And that has been, if I weren't working full time and didn't have those other 3 layers, actually it would be a breeze. But it's just one more thing on top of. And then because I'm bootstrapping this, I've also, you know, the website that you kindly put up before, you know, I built that myself. Like, I've done almost everything myself. So so the journey has been really complex, but really beautiful. Certainly really beautiful.
Wow, Mel, it's and the book, you know, I'm excited because I'm part of the whole community that you've created for these women, and so I'm learning and meeting and growing myself.
Me too.
You know?
It's been lovely to be in a WhatsApp with all of these beautiful women from around the globe, and just humbling to be able to interact and intersect with them, learn about what they're doing, share what we're doing. You know, it was just really amazing. And so tell us, you know, so what are some of the standout moments for you during the interviews with all of us queens?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And I'm going to tell you, and I'm not saying it because it's you two that are interviewing me. I would give this same answer anywhere else. One of my the overarching theme of my favorite things are when people became really vulnerable and really let me into their private lives, because that's an honor. I mean, I feel very honored by that. And, you know, one of the ones was when you two sent me the link to your wedding video. And I got to watch your wedding video. And when I was doing up some drafts and sharing them with my copy editor, she came back to me and she goes, "Were you at that wedding? That sounded amazing." I said, "No." She said, "You've written it as though you were at it." And I said, "Oh, I didn't mean to." I said, "I watched the video." She goes, "No, it feels like you were in the room." And so I loved that. And I thought that's really special. So though, you know, sharing people's personal lives, I loved. My longest interview I conducted was 3.5 hours, and it was with Kiko Beatty. Like, we wouldn't want to spend 3.5 hours with Kiko, right? She's amazing.
Yes.
And 2 things from that interview stand out. One, she made me blubber cry, because she held such incredible space. I mean, she's an angel on earth. Like, there's no doubt in my mind. She held such incredible space that I mean, I was blubbering. I mean, I cried in a few interviews, but I mean, I was crying. And I also really loved hearing about her younger days, you know, and there's one of my favorite little anecdotes. I said, "Oh, when did you enter the cannabis industry?" And she said, "Do you count when I was in high school and I bought a 5-finger lid and then I sold a joint wrapped in strawberry paper to my friend's brother?" And I said, "Yes, I do, actually." I very much count that. So those little anecdotes as well are really special. Addison Morris's story is so special because she was very engaged in that 60s and 70s social movement. I loved Sue de Gregorio Rosen. She shared stuff about Woodstock and about, you know, she used to be a photographer and she was backstage with the Rolling Stones. And so the book is it's not just about cannabis. It's not just about women and cannabis. It goes so much deeper into people's lives. And, you know, some stories are 3 pages long and some are just interwoven with everything else. But every story that I was told is woven into this book in some way. So it was really those beautiful, personal, real life, private stories that I was given access to so kindly, and that I've been trusted to retell. So that was for me the magic, I think.
Nice.
Truly adds the humanity, and again, that recognition that, this could be any of us. We all smoked pot in high school, but how do we bring it forward into our mature years, and blend it in, and almost all of us have had careers, before cannabis and during, because, it's kind of tough to make a living in this, right? So far, but it's wonderful to tell that humanizing story of all of us as well.
Yeah, amazing.
Absolutely.
So the other thing too is, do you believe the book will be impactful? So let's talk about impact.
Yeah, I do for a couple of reasons. And anyone who's not super spiritual is going to hop off this at the end and go, my God, Melanie is a woo-woo, like absolute spiritual woo-woo. And it's all true. I am. Yeah, so I'm in good company, so it's fine. But I think, I do believe it will be impactful. And that comes from, I believe it will be impactful for a few reasons. Number one, because I felt called to do it. I don't think that me doing this book, I don't think that this book is not about me by any means. As I've said, I've got 2 paragraphs and I'm in a few photos in it. That's it. I have the privilege of sharing all the other stories in my voice. So because it comes from a place of servant leadership in our community, because it comes from a place of raising other women's profiles and other women's stories, because it comes from a place of community, and it is so well intended. There is nothing bad, nasty, dark, shady about this book whatsoever. It is written with love and light. And for that reason, I don't believe there's any universal barrier that it will come up against. So I think that's one piece of it. I also think that, as women who work in cannabis, our stories do get told, and we do have community. There's pockets of community everywhere. And there are a few books. There are 5 or 6 books about women in cannabis, but there are none like this one, where I've truly spoken to women from all over the world and dived deep into their stories and pulled out some really key themes and really humanized it. So I think the book is unique. There is not another book like this. And if there is and I've missed it, please God, someone send it to me. I'd love to read it. Really. Yeah. And the third piece is, it's because it's a tool for women to build their own profile, to share their story. I say to all the women in the community, even those who are not directly in the book because they didn't know me or weren't aware of the book at the time, so didn't participate, to everyone I say, call yourself a queen, put it on your LinkedIn profile that you're a cannabis queen, share it, add it to your, whatever you want to do. This is a tool for you to take forward. So because it's not just me, I'm facilitating it, but I'm not really driving it. The community is driving it, and the community genuinely feel that it comes from that place of love and light. So if it doesn't sell 1 million copies, I'll be shocked. If it doesn't sell 1 million copies, I also don't care. I just want the stories to reach the people they need to reach. And I will be sending copies to some of our key politicians in Australia, and some change makers, because the whole point is for the stories to be heard. So, and I don't know what that looks like yet. I don't know where it goes. Is there another book? Is there a documentary attached? God, I hope so. I mean, I really don't know, but I trust that the universe is going to keep driving, and I'll keep facilitating, and the community will keep feeling uplifted. And I mean, what's going to stop that, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. There will be a big impact. We all worked in healthcare. We did before we got into this, right? And in my opening video, help me change the paradigm of healthcare, right? Because for far too long, I'm going on 40 years in healthcare, and they don't talk about this plant other than as a drug of abuse. And that is what I do hope that people can change, and in the stigma, and to listen to our stories, and to be able to know that this is a medicinal plant that can be created into these beautiful formulations, and not just the pharmaceuticals kind. Although I hope some of the folks in Washington might get a copy as we're going into rescheduling, so that we can really influence policy and lobby a little bit with the pen. But, you know, just and opening up, you know, people of color and sexualities. And, you know, it's like we met, you know, online and ended up merging our company. And then, of course, I meet her at the American Cannabis Nursing Association conference and traveled for 3 weeks to MJ Biz and back to Phoenix and Tucson and San Diego and Sedona. And, you know, and called her after a few days and said, would you be mine? You know, and being able to tell that story to a broader audience, you know, somebody that just sweeps your heart away, you know, in your 50s, when you never expect these things to happen. You know, it's like we want to open people's eyes to all kinds of things.
Yes.
You know, and this book does. I have an inkling just from what we share. And I know from the thread that I hope other women have been quite so forthcoming.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. They have. And, you know, what I'm excited about for you two in particular about, because I do share, I mean, you've seen your section of the book. Not everyone got to see their sections, but where there were particular stories that I felt I just needed checked. So maybe 5 or 6 of the stories I sent out, ones where they involve children or where they involved, I mean, you both shared so beautifully about your love story. And I wanted to just make sure people had a chance to check that. So you've just seen that section, but, you know, what I am so excited for about that for you two is you're both very public figures in cannabis. People know who you are. Everyone knows who you are. And some people will know your story. People know you're together, but people will not know the story that you've shared with me.
No.
And it comes back to that humanizing, like, look at these, you know, massive figures. And this is actually their really beautiful, intimate story. I mean, another example of that is Dr. Callie Seaman in the UK. She's co-chair of the Cannabis Industry Council. She's an absolute legend. She shared stories, a story not actually dissimilar to my own childhood story, that she has never shared publicly, ever.
Yeah.
It will help people understand, humanize and understand and connect with her and feel seen, you know, because when we're vulnerable and tell our story, it makes other people empowered. And I don't even love that word empowered, because we're not transferring power. I think inspired to share their own, in the same way that I was inspired in those last edits of the book. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to put my piece in. It just cracks open this shell of an image, whether it's intended or not, and helps people see more clearly the women of cannabis. I mean, I set out to really represent a huge diversity of women in cannabis and to move the needle on stigma about women in cannabis and what a female cannabis consumer looks like. My God, I've gone so much further than that. I mean, I exceeded my, you know, my minimum requirement for myself. I cannot even see it back there in the distance now. I cannot even perceive it. It's wild.
Amazing, Mel. Like literally, and you know, I'll just say, even, you know, knowing what we shared in your book, and knowing how vulnerable we are, actually inspired us to move forward with Elizabeth's book that's going to be coming out next year, hopefully by 4/20. And the title is Wine, Women, Weed, A Return to Love.
Wine, women, and weed.
So it's just very,
oh my God.
and the, you know, basically our true story is first being told in the Cannabis Queens book before it's even being told in her memoir. So that's how much we love and appreciate you, and felt safe to share our stories with you. So basically the world can get a little taste of, you know, holistic caring and the green nurse and the Max.
Yep. You'll learn about my childhood too.
I cannot wait to read it. And do you know, for me, that is the most beautiful thing in the world to hear, because, you know, someone asked me yesterday, you know, how will you feel if someone's critical of the book or says something about it? And I'm going to say, you know, what I'm going to do is say we need more books and more voices in the world. So actually, if you would like, I can tell you how I did it, so you have the tools, and then please tell your story in your way as well. And one woman, 2 women, 5 women, 10 women are inspired to go and write a book about cannabis or anything because I did this work now, like job done, job more than done, job done 100 times over. So for me, that's magical. And that is an entirely unintended consequence that I am delighted to imagine.
There you go. So your inspiration, Elizabeth always wanted to write her memoir, but it really, over this past year, knowing that your book is coming out, it just made sense for us to really go full steam ahead and write it.
Mhm.
And so we're editing right now. So which is, as you know, it takes a lot. But
Not for the faint-hearted.
I do want to get back to Cannabis Queens because one of the things, you said 85 photos in the book, correct? Okay, there's a lot.
It's a lot.
So what were your top 3 favorites?
Oh, okay, I can answer that. I'm going to have a top 3 plus 2, if that's okay.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so the 2 are I licensed 2. I paid $800 to license 2 prohibition posters.
Nice.
Because I really, and I was at a point where I was like, oh God, is it worth it? Everyone's seen these posters. But in chapter 1, where I talk about the history of cannabis and the reason, that propaganda was so effective and the demonizing of women and associating that with the cannabis plant was so effective. I mean, I had to show them, right? I needed them. So they're my plus 2, and I'm really grateful to myself for making that bold financial investment. So kudos to me. My 3 top photos. The first one it's actually of Heather Manis, someone who I know is very near and dear to you both.
Yes.
And it's this amazing, and I almost made it the cover of the book. Wow. I tried very hard, but it's a very old photo and it's very dark, which is what makes it beautiful. I just could not make it work for the cover of the book, but it was almost the cover. And it's Heather, and she's kind of profiled with light. She's backlit with her beautiful plaits, we all know, and she's kind of, her chin is up and she's, drawing on a joint.
Nice.
It's gorgeous. So that is in the book, but almost made the cover. My other favorite photo, and again, I mean, all the photos in this book, the printer's wild at me. He's like, oh, these aren't the right DPI. They aren't going to print crisp. I was like, mate, these are out of women's photo boxes. Just, it is what it is. So another one, another one I really love. I took myself on my phone in a dark, dingy pub in London back in May, and I went on my trip to go over and speak at the Women Changing the World Summit. And while I was over there, I did some interviews for the book. And the beautiful Heidi Whitman, who heads up Empower Cannabis Society, with the rest of the leadership team. But Heidi and I have become the very best of friends. I mean, I was literally 45 minutes on video chat with her this morning, minimum 5 days a week. I mean, we basically live together from the other side of the world. And she organized a meetup for industry. And so she wrangled basically 25 people from the UK cannabis industry to come and meet me at the start of my trip, so that any connections I made, that I was able to live those out during my time in the UK, which was amazing. And there's a photo, and I took the photo, and it's of Berta Cacuago of Ethvita, which is an almost launched education platform. It's Dr. Callie Seaman, and it's Heidi, and it's literally this semi-blurry photo in the bottom of a pub. And it's the photo on the cover page for the chapter called Best Buds, about the intimacy in women's friendships that develops. And so that's really special, because it was like a moment in my journey, which I really love. And then, there's lots of beautiful ones. I think there's a collection of 3 photos of Dawn Marie Steenstra in the book, because I spent a lot of time with Dawn. Really, she was so generous as well with her story. I mean, what a woman. What a woman, right? And so she sourced permission from her former patients. So Dawn's story appears in the chapter called High Hopes, which is about the medical piece specifically. And she got these permission from her patients to include beautiful photos of her with them, and they're kind of included in that story. So they're very special because you know, they show the children that she talks about who are, you know, fitting in, you know, seizing in front of, you know, the state assembly, and, you know, using full spectrum oil to stop that seizure during those legal proceedings. I mean, the story for people who don't understand cannabis as a medicine, and not everyone needs to. Some people don't want to, and that's okay. Some people just want to enjoy it at that more recreational, euphoric level, and that's fine. But for those who understand cannabis as a medicine, that story is going to hit you right in the heart. And then I've got a beautiful photo of Raina, the little girl who the story talks about, with Dawn. So there's a really good spread of different photos in there. But yeah, it's a very visual book, and it's really a coffee table book because I've printed it on all gloss satin paper. So it's very, I mean, I want the whole experience of touching the book, holding the book. I mean, it's nice and heavy. It has a soft touch, velvety kind of cover. It has high gloss pages. The whole experience should feel beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Well, I was going to ask how you designed the cover, because the cover is quite striking as well. I mean, that hot pink and the white lettering, you know, it's really cool.
Yeah. Thank you. So, so I actually, this is a nice opportunity for me to shout out. When I lost my publisher, I also lost my designer and copy editor, which was actually turned out to be such a blessing, because I got to call up one of my old friends who's a copy editor who has edited and supported me to become a better writer for over a decade on all my professional work. And I rang her and I said, I've lost my publisher. I've got 8 weeks till I go live. Can you jump in? She said, yes, I'm in. And then I made the same call to a designer who I'd met through a friend. His name is Andy Doohan. And he's actually just won a few awards for his other work. And I said to him, I have an almost fully developed concept. I already have the color palette. I already know what I want, but I need someone to bring it to life for me and to help me refine it. And that's the journey we went on together. And, you know, when I went in on the first time we ever worked on it, I went in and the first thing I said was, there is no way this book's going to be pink. It's too predictable. It's too typical. No pink. And I also said, and I'm having that Heather Manis photo for the cover. I don't care if you tell me it's not. Anyway, I was quickly educated, very quickly educated. And we came up with it together, and I went away and I thought about the pink. And I love the color pink. I love it. And I really enjoy exploring it as a feminine color. But the thing I really love about this particular pink that I chose, and we spent a lot of time choosing it, is that it's a real FU kind of pink. It's a real punk pink. It's Sex Pistols pink. It's strong. It's badass. You know, it's a really strong, powerful, clear message that, yes, it's pink, but it's pink. Like, it's pink. So that's kind of how it became pink. Originally, it wasn't going to be. I chose, I use lots of caps. The reason you'll see lots of caps used throughout the book, capital letters, and really strong and bold writing, is because my handwriting, I write all in capital letters. I don't use cursive at all.
Wow.
So, yeah, I know. Look, I don't know where that comes from. I suspect it comes from, you know, I have ADHD, and as a child, you know, my brain goes a million miles an hour. I'm very clever, but my handwriting is rubbish. And I think I was less punished when my writing was in caps because teachers could read it. So I think that's probably where it comes from. But I said to Andy, we first looked at it, you know, and it wasn't all in caps. And I said, it doesn't look like I wrote it. And he goes, what do you mean? And I showed him my handwriting, and he goes, it has to be all caps. I was like, yes. So the main body copy is not all caps, but all the titles are, because, and again, it's that really strong thing. And further, I mean, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this design. If you think back to the, you know, zines, punk zines that would come out in that really revolutionary kind of underground movement, all of the zines were made, you know, they were all written in caps, or they were all, you know, when collage letters were done, that was all caps as well. So the design of the book is about strong, smart, powerful, revolutionary, and a little bit of punk attitude, because that's how I perceive our community of women.
Yeah.
So-
Awesome.
So what's next for the Cannabis Queens in the world?
I mean, my gosh, it's such a good question. It's such a good question. I would like to actually, let me throw that one back at you and say, instead of choosing or waiting for Spirit to download it to me, let me ask, as members of the Cannabis Queens community and as women in cannabis, what would you like to see me do with the Cannabis Queens brand?
Ooh.
You go.
Ooh, no, you go. You go, because Elizabeth's well, I can already see the business mind going, and I'm getting all creative. I want to have
Well,
parties. I want to have a slumber party, like
a movie.
a movie,
A
cannabis,
movie.
yeah,
That's
a
what we need.
documentary,
Yeah.
bringing
Yeah.
it to life.
That's next. And we know a filmmaker, Amadeus, who you might know as well.
I don't, but I look forward to being introduced at MJ, please and thank you.
Yeah, actually,
You know,
yeah.
I do think, if I think back, you know, the core purpose for the book is representation.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm a very visual person, and I believe that most people are very visual people. I also believe that in our modern contemporary context, when we're consuming so much input, so much stimulus, that visual stimulus is always better. It hits home, it hits harder.
Yeah.
So really, thematically, representation, you could say, is about being seen. That's why there's so many photos in the book. That's why I've laid out the book in caps with section dividers, with every chapter has its own title page with a feature photo. So it is a really visual book and a visual project. I think if money was not an issue, if I was just, you know, you've got an unlimited budget, what do you want to do next year with your life? I got asked that the other day, and my answer was, I would like to go on the road for 3 months, and I'd start in the States, and I would do North America, and I would travel around, and I would film content for a documentary or a docuseries called Cannabis Queens, and then I would repeat that in other countries. So I actually would love to do that, and I think that these stories, and then the stories that don't fit in 278 pages, need to be shown. I want to show us. I want people to see us, you know? So I really don't know. I'm sure the universe or Netflix are going to let me know.
Yeah, absolutely.
When cannabis is not so taboo.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it will be very soon.
And I do have one last question.
Yes.
Who is a cannabis queen? Has
All of
anyone
us.
ever asked you that? That's what I was going to say. Who is the cannabis
Yeah.
queen? There you go.
All of us, absolutely all of us. So, and it's such an important distinction, Cannabis Queen and Cannabis Queens. And I should have realized my publisher was not the right publisher, or that I actually didn't need a publisher, because when I said to them, it's called Cannabis Queens, and the first thing they said was, oh, we love this for you. You're the Cannabis Queen. You're the queen. And I said, no, you've entirely missed the point. It's
Right.
Cannabis Queens. It's not one above the other. It's a court of queens that includes all of us. And it's not, even though the book is the voices of women who work with cannabis, because I believed, and I still believe, women who have worked with, in any capacity, the plant are the best informed, because you have to be, right? Because you have a duty to be.
Yeah.
A cannabis queen is any woman, anyone who identifies as a woman, anyone who dabbles in womanhood, anyone who sits in that feminine end of the gender spectrum, because that's my lived experience. So that's why I'm writing about women. Anyone who sits in that end of the gender spectrum at any point in time and has a relationship with the plant.
There you go.
That's it.
Love it.
Very cool.
Absolutely beautiful.
Stunning.
Oh, Melanie, I am so excited for you, for the future of Cannabis Queens. I'm honored to be part of the book. Really honored. Thank you for allowing us to have this podcast the night before Thanksgiving. We're very excited. And, Melanie's going to be in MJ BizCon. Do you want to tell everyone really quickly where they can find you if people are going to be going to MJ Biz?
Yes, absolutely. So I would love to, first thing is I would love to meet everyone. So please approach me. Please come and see me, because I'm going to be a deer in the headlights in Vegas. So please come up and say hello. I'm speaking actually at the Women's Leadership Forum at 1:45 on the 3rd. And my topic is women who are making an impact in the global cannabis industry. And I have some beautiful co-panelists. I'll also be at Blunt Brunch that evening. I'll also be at the Las Vegas Classic. Both of those events have invited me as an honored guest, which is truly an honor. And then importantly, on the 4th, the Cannabis Queens book launch, hosted by the Women's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, is happening at the Tuscany Casino and Suites. And I'll make sure that there's a link available. There's certainly a link on the Instagram and to get tickets to that. And then I'll be all over Vegas all week. I'm doing all sorts of things, but they're my key ones.
Excellent.
Awesome.
So in the show notes, you can see all of Melanie Wentzel's links to Cannabis Queens World, her personal page, and her social media pages as well. So you can get updates on what Melanie is doing. Melanie, this has been absolutely amazing. We are very honored to have you here. Happy Thanksgiving and happy holidays to everyone. And remember, everyone, what it's all about. It is truly all about living your best life and helping others do the same. And we're going to end with my other favorite video, and we will see you all next time.
Many blessings to you.
We're here to educate and empower patients to make choices that are best for them. We're also here to decrease stigma around what it means to feel good and be high. Hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing. The Green Nurse is a holistic cannabis nurse that teaches on the endocannabinoid system and the safe utilization of cannabis and other progressive tools to help people reach a better quality of life.
I was cannabis agnostic for many, many years. And you know, the more research I did, the more I discovered that cannabis is this amazing medicine.
I was told that I had a 4-stage pancreatic cancer. The doctor really told me he couldn't do anything else. He gave me her name and she called me and she came to my house. She started to give me cannabis. My oncologist was puzzled because he couldn't find the cancer anymore.
All of the learning that we get comes from the Green Nurses Group, comes from their support, comes from their guidance. I trust everything that she says.
Simply meet people where they're at. The plant doesn't, stress to grow, so we don't stress to share it. We're healing people.
Cannabis has been used as a medicine for tens upon thousands of years. Here's the big message. Cannabis needs to be federally legal. We need to have laws that are the same across all 50 states that allow access to anyone and everyone who wants to utilize this powerful medicine.